paid special attention to making the entire upgrading process simple and painless.
The only problem with Microsoft is they just have no taste. I have a problem with the fact that they just make really third-rate products.
You may have heard of Apple versus Microsoft. Elon Musk versus, well, everyone. But rivalries between tech companies are not a recent phenomenon. I was quite surprised to learn that as far back as the early 1900s, companies were already fighting for dominance in the computer industry. Well, let's debug history. To understand how this explosive feud began, we have to go all the way back to 1890, where a man named Herman Hollerith invented a mechanism that expedited the counting of people during the American National Census. I've already done a video on it. Be sure to check it out after you're done watching this one. The relationship between Hollerith and the US Census Bureau broke down in the early 1900s. Hollerith had decided to raise the lease fees for his tabulation machines, and the US Census Bureau felt like he was becoming a little too greedy. To make matters worse, Hollerith held a patent which effectively gave him a monopoly over tabulation machines and its key component, the punch card.
The US government was not so happy with Hollerith. They were paying sky-high lease fees to one guy who acted like he'd invented owning information itself. Enter James Powers, a quiet engineer working inside the Census Bureau. He was given a mission: break Hollerith's grip. Powers sniffed out a loophole in Hollerith's patents. Hollerith's machines read round holes electrically. Powers made his rectangular and mechanical. Technically different, practically the same. The kind of innovation lawyers call plagiarism with extra steps. But this wasn't just about two inventors. Whoever controlled these machines controlled the world's data. And so the feud began. On one side, Hollerith's tabulating machine company, the seed that would grow into IBM. On the other, Powers' accounting machine company, which later merged into Remington Rand. Two companies, two futures, the start of a corporate feud that would define the machine age. But it didn't stay contained for too long. The feud spilled out into the business world, from government censuses to bank ledgers to insurance offices. Suddenly, computation wasn't just for counting people, it was for running everything. And the punch card, it became a hot commodity. By the early 1900s, data wasn't just for governments. Banks, insurance companies, factories, all of them were drowning in numbers and desperate for machines. Mathematical computation was a pain in the posterior. Computing large numbers required an army of geniuses who were addicted to nicotine and caffeine. Precision was precious, but painfully slow. Along came the Burroughs adding company to save the day. Their sturdy adders turned clerks into human calculators on steroids. Instead of sweating over long columns of figures, you punched the keys, pulled the lever, and voila, instant totals. Offices that once balanced books by candlelight could now close their ledgers before lunch. Productivity soared, and the era of mechanical arithmetic began. It was the 1900s version of tapping equals on a calculator. But some people needed more than adding. Engineers and actuaries wanted multiplication. And for them, there was a Millionaire Calculator. It could multiply numbers directly. No tedious repeated addition. Just crank the handle and out came the product. They called it the Millionaire, a name that doubled as its price tag. Yet, for those who could afford it, it was revolutionary. Compound interest, insurance risk, engineering tolerances, calculations that once took hours were now done in minutes. Hollerith's tabulators and Powers' punch card systems joined this ecosystem. Suddenly, you had a whole arsenal: adders, multipliers, tabulators, all churning out ledgers, payrolls, and reports at an industrial scale. Computation was no longer exotic. It was becoming the everyday language of business. Before computers could think, they had to talk, and the first place that happened was the telephone. In 1891, Orman Strowger, an undertaker who was convinced the local operator was stealing his customers, decided to automate revenge. The problem? Every call went through a human switchboard. If the operator didn't like you, your business calls mysteriously dropped. Strowger built the Strowger Switch, a clunky stack of contacts that let phones connect automatically. No human middleman. Petty? Yes. Revolutionary? Absolutely. He had turned jealousy into the world's first automatic routing system. The logic behind that switchboard, that is, choosing connections by number, would echo all the way into early computers. And while offices were getting faster on paper, a new kind of machine was quietly glowing in the labs. Not mechanical, not even electromechanical, but electronic. Early circuits behaved like bad plumbing. Current sloshed both directions. Signals leaked everywhere. In 1904, John Ambrose Fleming fixed that with a vacuum diode, a little glass tube that let current flow only one way. Think of it as giving electricity a one-way street. Traffic finally moved in order. That tiny fix made radio detection possible and laid the groundwork for electronic logic. 2 years later came the real game changer. The world had signals, but they were weak. Every time a message traveled, it faded, like shouting across an ocean. In 1906, Lee De Forest added a third element to Fleming's tube and created the Audion Triode. Suddenly, electricity could shout back. Weak signals were amplified strong enough to cross continents. De Forest called himself the father of radio. Historians call him complicated, mostly because he spent more time in court defending his patents than in the lab inventing them. But his Audion was the first true building block of modern electronics. By 1914, the stage was set. Two streams of invention flowing side by side, but not yet touching. On one side, data processing hardware, machines that could add, multiply, and tabulate the business of an entire nation. On the other, electronics. Strowger switches, Fleming's diode, De Forest's triode. Inventions that turned sparks into signals and whispers into broadcasts. On the business side, Hollerith's tabulating machine company grew and merged, becoming the Computing, Tabulating, Recording Company. Oof, a mouthful, I know. In 1924, it rebranded, much cooler name this time, International Business Machines, or simply IBM. Meanwhile, Power's accounting machine company was bought by Remington Typewriter, which merged with Rand Cardex to form Remington Rand. Two companies, born from the same idea, both trying to own the language of data. Their battlefield, the humble punch card. If you bought one company's machine, you were logged into their cards, their printers, their ecosystem. It was the Apple versus Android of the 1930s, except both ran on cardboard. Then the world went to war. Code breaking, logistics, radar, all demanded machines that could think faster than clocks. The mechanical world of Hollerith met the electronic world of De Forest. Punch cards fed data, vacuum tubes processed it. Together, they became the first computers. By the 1950s, IBM and Remington Rand weren't just making business machines, they were building computers. Remington Rand had the UNIVAC. This lady's name is Grace Hopper. She's kind of a big deal. Remember her name. And IBM had the 701. The Feud had evolved, from holes in paper to bits in memory.
So the next time you hear about Apple versus Microsoft or Google versus Meta, remember, the first tech feud did not start online. It started with two men, a stack of punch cards, and one question: who owns the holes? History debugged.